Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name's Joe Kuzma, and I am joined by my good friend, my buddy, my colleague, my cohort, my partner in crime, Mr. Brian E. Roach. What's going on, Brian?
I am celebrating a joyous beginning to July because my favorite Chinese restaurant has reopened, and I was able to get me some spicy chicken and broccoli. I know that's the last two things I've talked about is food, and considering I don't eat that much anymore, it's kind of weird, but I'm psyched. I'm pumped. I got my food. I'm happy.
Is it weird that now I've had these in the freezer? There's like these already prepared teriyaki chicken breasts, and I'm like, man, I think I'm gonna grill that this weekend. Then I went and I got like shredded lettuce and made sure I had Mexican cheese in case I want to make some tacos. Just because ground beef, the packs I used to buy from the wholesale place like a Sam's Club, they didn't always have those, and they had a whole bunch of them, and I made sure I picked one up. And it's like, it's the good stuff. It's like the 90% lean and the Angus grass-fed whatever. And I'm like, so I'm looking at making tacos and looking at making teriyaki chicken and missed our nation's birthday. Is that very American? Or I don't know. If anything is very American, I guess that would be that, we have the freedom to do whatever we pretty much want, with the exception of what we're going to talk about today.
Hey!
I kind of wish it would be just kind of a freedom. I don't know. I really don't know how this is all going to pan out. We're talking COVID-19, the coronavirus, and that's about the only two names we'll use for that here, but there are many others. Pandemic, quarantine, self-isolation, social distancing, all this crazy stuff. I hate the word new normal because it's not normal. It's still weird to me, and I don't know that it's going to be normal, or I think it's saying new normal, I don't think that's correct. I think this is temporary. I don't think we're going to be like this the rest of our lives. We're not living in a dystopian science fiction film. So we're just, we're moving ahead. We're moving ahead here, I guess, Brian. And, they talk about how there's all these cases and this and that. And I don't know. It seems like everybody changes their mind. We get conflicting news from different sources and don't know who to believe. And some people say, well, listen to the experts. And the experts change their mind. And I'm just banging my head against the desk and just want football. And then we get some more news about that. So let's go back to the old news for a minute. Obviously, when all of this stuff started dropping, Major League Baseball was supposed to start just within a short period of time there, and opening day came and gone, and there was no beginning to baseball season. There hasn't been baseball since. Hockey was very close to getting into the postseason, as was the NBA. So those regular seasons didn't quite finish. They haven't restarted yet. Even UFC has been doing their own thing a little bit now. Wrestling has been going without any real people in the crowd. The most they have is maybe a few trainees or other wrestlers, social distanced, away from the ring, and they're there to provide a little bit of ambience or crowd noise, because when they first went to do this without any fans, it was bizarre, creepy, and it puts you to sleep because, it's an audience participation thing. That's what they call it, spectator sports. Whether you want to call wrestling a sport or not, it's kind of the same thing. When you don't have any crowd noise, it's creepy and it's weird. So, but anyways, WrestleMania.
So what you're saying is that the change made it exactly the way it's always been for me.
Oh, get out of town. Get out of town. You could have went the NASCAR route too. You could have had NASCAR was doing the virtual races, the computerized races. Although that was kind of neat though, because they have the simulators that these drivers they use this software or whatever, and it was kind of intriguing. But then they had the esports thing too, where we were watching a bunch of geeks, which I should give them a lot more respect than that, because I suck at video games. I try my best, but there's a reason I don't play Madden online. I'm sure there's a reason you don't either, because we get our butts handed to us.
Exactly.
So,
I'm old and I don't have that kind of finger coordination.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't have the mental capacity or the patience, and also if I do play online, I don't put the headset on. I have something which amounts to the sound of Alvin the Chipmunk talking trash, often with cuss words, and probably in somebody's basement, mommy and daddy. And it's one of those things where I just don't even wear a headset if I go online and play any online video games. So just my whole point in all that was all of that was on television because there's nothing else going on. So what does the NFL do? So far, I mean, we've had the draft online, which actually worked out pretty well, and I would actually hope, it would be kind of cool if we get back to the way things were when me and you were younger, Brian. 1 year ago, 2019. But if we get back to the way, I wouldn't mind them doing some of the Zoom thing and that, like days 2 and 3 of the draft, where they don't have the guys in the green room and stuff like that. I still like the green room thing and the fans, being in the large plazas wherever they end up having it. But Vegas was presumably, because that's where it was supposed to be this year until they canceled things. So everything gets pushed back into 2021 here, and. I don't know. I kind of like that. I kind of enjoyed. You got to see a little bit more webcams or whatever. It had a more personal feel. I thought it was kind of neat. And then Roger Goodell is in his best Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers impersonation, sitting there next to the fireplace or whatever the heck he had there in his. That had to be a set. I don't know. His basement probably has like cages and all kinds of whips and chains and weird crap in it. But anyway. That's
an image I don't need.
It's a scene from Pulp Fiction. Just put that in your head. Roger Goodell's basement.
I don't need to know that about Roger Goodell.
He has a gimp down there. So anyway, and please don't look that up if you have children around or anything, by all means. I was kind of neat, but none of this is going to work for real football. Okay. And so far, we haven't had like rookie mini camps. We haven't had your traditional OTAs. You've even had people scolding the players. Well, you had the governor of Pennsylvania scold Big Ben for getting a haircut. You had, I mean, you can't even go. He's out there throwing passes. Some of these guys are working out together like they always do, and that's their social circle. You know what I mean? And we're always hearing about these cases. Now, I guess the NBA is up to maybe 10% of their guys so far that have caught this. I don't really know. We don't know how it all works. I'm under the presumption that if you catch it, it's like something where you're not susceptible to catch it again, at least maybe right away. I don't know. I don't know if it's like chicken pox. There's people that have joked when we were younger, Brian. It was literally, my wife tells a story where I guess one of the neighbor kids got it and mom brought him over, her and her sister rub and play with this kid, get it out of the way. Because if you get it when you're older, it was deadly. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know if we build an immunity and maybe is there any advantage? Because some people were joking when like half the Clemson team or whatever football team already had it. And they were like, is that a competitive advantage? Because they're all trying to get it and then get it out of the way. So then they don't lose maybe one of their star players if there's a fall football season. And there's so many layers to this, and there's so many different competitive leagues and stuff that are changing rules and things of that nature that I don't know. I'm like, does everyone just get it and then all of a sudden we are back to normal instead of a new normal, or do we kind of go the route of we'll see what one team just announced, and we'll be talking about that in a sec.
This is my thought on all this. The problem with the mentality of we all just need to get it so that we get over it is that part of the confusion related to this particular thing is you do not know how it will impact any one individual.
Yes.
The much higher chance is that you'll get sick and then you'll be fine. But it's not just old people who are dying of it. It's not just people with compromised immune systems who are dying of it. There are people who have very severe reactions to this in relation to their age and and all kinds of other situations. No pre-existing conditions, and then they're gone. So there's just no question. It's a risk that you want to avoid if you can. But and I think that's a big part of the risk factor of all of this. You got all these guys that you mentioned the fact that the experts don't know what the experts don't know, and I've said for many years, doctors don't know anything anyway. Doctors guess, because they make their best guess based on what it is. But we're all unique. We all have unique, systems that operate within us. There is obviously similarities and a lot of crossover, but we react to things differently and uniquely. And this is a circumstance where no human being alive today has really that could call themselves an expert has ever been through something like this. So they're learning as they go, which is scary enough on its own. But they're going to be wrong, and then they're going to adjust. And the downside of that is it sometimes makes them look a little incompetent, or it makes them look like they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah. Let me interject. That's part of the reason there's some there's distrust or confusion among the general public too, and it's not necessarily because they're wrong. It's because you flip flop, and then it's like, well, it's like a weather forecast. It's like, how do you know what's right?
Yeah, exactly. And what I think people need to understand in relation to this is that they have a certain set of expectations based on data that they get. And then if the data changes, they have to change that expectation. And you talk about the new normal concept. I use that term, but I don't like that term any better than you do. But I will tell you, I don't know. I don't know when normal's coming back. And I'm a strong proponent that normal is not coming back until there's a vaccine. And the problem is that this thing is already mutating. And as it mutates, will the vaccine work? You never know. So it's, although I will be glad to say that the current mutation is no more deadly than the old one. It's easier to spread.
Well, and you know what? That's the other, man, it's just so crazy. And we'll talk about the Packers put out, I think they're the first team to actually put out some type of press release thing like that. But we've already got the NFL in a situation where they've postponed the Hall of Fame festivities and Hall of Fame game, and I think that's more or less because I live in the state of Ohio, and I hadn't publicly broadcasted, but I'd actually moved too. So I live in a city that's the first that mandated the mask thing, and it's actually very much common sense. It's what I've already done. I'm not for or anti-mask in any way. I usually wear a mask because I'm going to face it here. I'm a little hard of hearing from blowing a referee whistle. That's the loudest they make. I've been doing that for about 24 years, so I already know I've lost some of my hearing. So I talk a little louder, and the louder you talk, the more you project and spit into the air, whether you see those droplets or not. So I wear a mask because I'm not going to be in a public place indoors, key word here, because I wouldn't be around a real large group of people. I don't feel, I never really feel comfortable around that anyways. Maybe in the stadium setting because you expect it, you're packed in like sardines, and that's part of what we'll be talking about here too. But, the policy they put in place was pretty much the same thing. It's like, if you could social distance outdoors, you don't need it. That's the way I've always felt. If I'm in my car, I'm like, I don't need it. It's like, come on, people. It's like, you got to be able to breathe a little bit. And, I see people make fun of things like, well, this cloth mask or whatever. This is what the people who are working on this wear, and it looks like a hazmat suit or whatever. It looks like something literally out of the movies. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like Chernobyl or something. And it's like, well, here, this bandana will protect you, but that's not the point. You're spitting, you're spitting outward, and you don't know, and they don't know either. They also say if you're asymptomatic, they don't know if it could be transferred or not. It's just so confusing. And because you have all this confusion, what do you do when you're a multi-million or billion-dollar industry and you've got insurance, you've got all of these other things that you have to worry about now? Do you want to have on your shoulders that somebody dies under your watch? Whether it be a fan, whether it be the beer guy selling beer in the stands. I mean, let's face it. If you're sitting in the stands, you might be munching on some food. You might be drinking a beer. You can't really do that with a mask on. I don't know. Are we going to have beer straws with a fancy mask that has a little hole in it? Although I might be for that because I've always hated, like, when you go to a stadium, I think, was it Cleveland that did this? Somebody did this. Maybe it was Cincinnati. I'd have to ask Ryan to remember this. They didn't give us, like, the bottle or the can for the beer. You had to pour it into a plastic, like, Solo cup. And then if you're not holding that a certain way, it fills up to the rim, and then you spill some of it. And then the old cup holders that were in Heinz Field, I think they've fixed them since. I think they replaced them last year, to be honest. They used to have a tilt to them, and I've probably told this story before where, I'm big and you're trying to walk across the middle of the aisle and everybody's knees are sticking out, and all of a sudden, like, I hit somebody's beer and spilled it, and I'm like, I just handed the lady a $10 bill. I'm like, what else am I supposed to do? Sorry, I'm a big galoot, and these are crappy cup holders. But if you didn't drink about a third of it down, it would have spilled out. And then you get the people who jump up in the air, and there's stuff flying off of their hair, their face, their own food, whatever, particles, confetti, and it's going to fall into your darn Solo cup. You know what I mean? It's like, I was always, so a beer straw wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't be opposed to that. But, these are the things that we got to start considering is these organizations have to, how are they going to take these calculated risks? Movie theaters are just, in fact, today, at least here in the state of Ohio, movie theaters are just opening up right now. So getting back to my story about living in the state of Ohio, the governor here, Mike DeWine, he pretty much said like 2 weeks ago that the Hall of Fame stuff wasn't going to happen. He kind of hinted at it, and he kind of strong-armed the NFL in a certain way to where their hands are tied. So they had to make that decision, and they had to make it pretty quick because we're about a month out from all of that going on. So you don't want people, and people probably already have made plans and booked hotels, and a lot of people are, there is a financial aspect to this too, and nobody wants to lose money and go out of business. You got to have money to pay the bills. It doesn't matter if it's you or I, Brian, or if it's, the Rooney family. People got to pay the bills somehow. The players got to pay the bills. Some of these guys got house and car notes and things of that nature too. So it's a very precarious thing because you got to be able to make money. I know it's really hurting people like ESPN and in their pockets because if they don't have anything to show, that's why they're showing the esports. They got to show something because they have advertisers, and then those advertisers are losing money too, and they're not going to want to spend a whole lot if you don't have the big draw like Major League Baseball or whatever else. So everybody's trying to scramble to figure something out here, and it's very difficult to do because you're calculating your risk based on information that's changing almost hourly in some cases. So just throwing that out there, I'm wondering what we're going to see if and when we do see an NFL season. Let me go out on a limb and say, I think everyone is prepared to play an NFL season. I don't know if every single stadium, because all of these stadiums, for the most part, are in different states. Okay, in the state of Ohio, you have Cleveland and Cincinnati, so that state may have different rules and laws and regulations governing it than the state of Pennsylvania with the Steelers and Eagles. And then within itself, the city of Philadelphia, city of Pittsburgh, city of Cleveland, they may have their own ordinances and things that are overriding different stuff. And this is going to be a giant mess because we're going to talk about what the Packers put in here, which seems like it's pretty much the same thing like I was just talking about, common sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you're going to be around people, you put a mask on. If you're not going to be around people, then the mask, I'm sure, could come on. It's like smoking. It's like the no smoking signs. You know what I mean? You can't smoke in a stadium. The people, you get off the property and you're out there, and then you want to light up a cigarette and you're not blowing it in someone's face. It's kind of like the same principle here. So I know I'm getting long-winded, but I guess my point is, we don't know what this is going to look like or if it's going to be consistent across the entire league, all 32 teams, because everyone's in a different municipality that may have different rules and laws governing it.
Yeah, and at any given point, with the way that the spread of this disease is occurring, at any given point, any state that currently is not, quote unquote, a hot zone could become one. So, you never know when it's going to change. But I will tell you, my view of things, and we had talked about this at a couple podcasts earlier, whether there was going to be a season. And I think we both essentially agreed we thought there would be. We just weren't sure what it would look like. But what the Packers have released really falls in line with what my expectations would be as to what this is going to end up looking like, which, there is an outside chance that they play in front of no one. If that's the state that they're in, and in that current situation, there's a ban against these large gatherings, because while most of these are outdoor stadiums, and the simple fact is it's harder to get it outdoors. We're not talking about the heat of summer anymore. We're talking about now in the colder climes of the fall and the winter, where there is a better chance of these types of things spreading. It may be mandated that there are no gatherings like this. Well, are they going to play in front of nobody? Maybe. But I think it's more likely the second option they have, which they will probably have fans in the seats at a reduced fashion. There will be some kind of a social distancing rule. There will be a way for you to decide whether you, as a season ticket holder or a ticket holder of some kind, can opt in or opt out. And then they'll figure out how they move forward. But it's almost, and this is one of my favorite words in a scene from The Princess Bride, it's almost inconceivable that a billion-dollar industry like the NFL will just not have its season. It's like, I've said this to many people I know. It's one thing for the hockey thing. It's one thing for Major League Baseball. yes, they're important sports. They generate a lot of income, but they're not the NFL. The NBA is still, again, as popular as it is, it's not the NFL. There is so much that rides on every NFL season outside of just the games and the outcomes of those games. So many different industries rely on that support. I just can't imagine there not being a season. But it's what that season looks like. And from the standpoint of the Steelers, who, while they're not quite in the same climb as Green Bay, it's a northern climb. It's a colder climb. I think that you're very likely to see similar type situations where you could have a limited capacity for the games based on whatever the current situation is, and you could even see, okay, we're fully open, and then in 2 weeks the game is no, we're not anymore. Because of changing issues with the disease.
Well, I mean, that's a great one too, because that was the XFL, and it killed the entire league. I mean, the league itself there was probably X amount of dollars breaking point to say, this is what we're going to do until we hit this point, and then if we hit this point, we got to fold. And how many weeks do we even get in? Maybe 3, 4, maybe of the XFL season. And all of a sudden, I think Seattle was one of the first cities that started clamping down, and shortly thereafter, a few others, and all of a sudden they were refunding tickets. They were doing, they were trying to play I think they tried to, and maybe even played 1 week where there was like no one in the stands there, possibly, or Seattle went on the road. They flipped their schedule and had them go on the road instead of play at home to avoid, the rules. And it's something that I bring up because you could see this happen in the NFL. You and I have partially joked about this. I split a season with a gentleman. You're a season ticket holder yourself. It's like, how are we making plans? Because, I do want to take the wife and daughter and go to New York City. They play the Giants for week 1. Is week 1 going to actually fall on the date it's planned for right now, which I don't have it in front of me, but or is it going to be 2 or 3 weeks later? Are they going to try and push this back? And is pushing it back a good idea? It's the same thing you mentioned is, when you're outdoors, there's other factors in viruses traveling and things. And I don't profess to be an expert. These are the things I've read, obviously, but we've heard everything from it dies in heat or dies in sunlight to how wind, plays a factor into things traveling, dying, breaking up in the wind, and things of that nature. But you make a good point. When you're up in like Green Bay, for example, I think it snows 11 out of 12 months of the year there, or even Buffalo for that matter, to be completely honest. And the Steelers got to play there too. But how you and I, we've talked. It's like, how could you can't even make plans. You know what I mean? Now, if you're a season ticket holder, now do the Steelers lose money too by selling you a package and then having to refund you half of your money because you're only going to be able to attend half of the games? The Green Bay Packers came out, and this is they were saying, they said at this time, although the organization remains optimistic, there is a possibility that Lambeau Field will be unable to host fans for games this season. At this time, the team is preparing to have fans in attendance with new policies and safety measures to allow for appropriate social distancing. And they put this in bold because this is the part of the article you scroll down to and you must read. Which will require the stadium seating capacity to be significantly reduced. Face coverings also will be required. Someone on Twitter joked they wear them all the time anyways because they're in Green Bay because it's cold. And that was part of my thought. Like November, December, I'm probably at least have something, that I would be able to cover my face with when I'm there. I'm definitely, starting to bundle up a little more depending on the climate even in Pittsburgh, but face coverings also will be required. And the Twitterverse is great, too, because then people are showing pictures of people drinking and spilling beer and, things of that. Like, how do you drink a beer with the mask on? And that's been a big thing I enjoy craft beer, too, and the breweries. And some of the breweries haven't officially opened up. Some have outdoor patios. It all depends. Even some of them have gone to plastic cups instead of glassware. We've never had to worry about glass in an NFL stadium, but it does make you wonder about concession lines, the way it already is. And there's already a capacity for these things determined by fire marshals and things of that nature. So now when you get into social distancing, it's like how much of a capacity are you looking at with this? But let me finish. Face coverings will also be required and other necessary precautions will be in place. They didn't actually say what those precautions are. I imagine it's going to be trying to take someone's temperature before they enter the stadium. They have these electronic gizmos. Brian, I probably didn't tell you this. I just joined a Moose Lodge. This is recent news.
Oh.
Yeah, I just joined a Moose Lodge. I got a sponsor. I'm in a Moose Lodge, and we have one of these things. It looks like a tablet, almost like an iPhone, Android thing. It has like the front camera, and you play, and it shows like a diagram around it where you line up so your face is lined up, and it's able to take your temperature from about I think it's like almost 24 to 36 inches, so 2-3 feet. Away, and it's like on a little pedestal, and it has like a big like green or red light on it, and it's green, and then you go because it's you're good as far as you having your temperature taken. I have a feeling that's where we're headed. It's going to be just like the metal detectors, and it's going to be a mess if you're trying to get into the stadium for kickoff time. They're going to have to open gates earlier or something in order to facilitate all this, and then of course the only thing that might be better with a lot of people talk about bathroom lines, concession lines. Well, if you have significantly reduced attendance, those lines shouldn't be too much longer now because there's less people that need to go and take a leak at halftime or whatever, So it might not be so bad. But then you got to wonder, too, at least in the men's room, that now they replace some of these at Heinz Field, but you still have urinals or you had the troughs before, and some people would pack in, It might only be able to fit 2 guys, but darn it, we're going to fit 5 in here because we're drunk and it's halftime and we're in a hurry to get back and watch the game. That's not social distancing at all. So that's going to be... It's going to be an interesting thing, and just to finish up this bold typed paragraph from the Packers, as a result, the special experience to which fans are accustomed at Lambeau Field will look and feel very different. I've also heard, like somebody said, well, no Lambeau leaps. Probably not. But also, I'm hearing the NFL wants to put advertising on the first few rows of the fields all the way around, almost like the banners you see sometimes are in soccer stadiums. Yep. You see the tarps, some of the baseball stadiums or some of the places where they black out and they tarp an upper deck. And they're looking to do this, I guess, maybe to create even more distance between the players, personnel, and staff between fans that are on the field. I would almost assume that you would almost hockey would be kind of cool, and I mentioned this with the WWE stuff earlier. They put up like the glass or the plexiglass hockey walls to have like what little bit of fans that they have, which are still their employees. They're just there playing office fans. But they have glass between them, just like you would in a store or anything like that, just like almost like the hockey rink. And I'm like, are we going to box in the NFL stadiums now and put up some plexiglass if you're not going to get rid of those first few rows? And how's that going to impact the people who have and pay for those seats? And to be completely honest, if they're the people that are the ones that buy them just to resell them for an obscene amount of money, I will not cry a single tear for them. Screw them if they lose out on that. I don't care if that's like your live. There's a difference between price gouging and something being in demand of that at the price, that you set for it. And when and I have like a pet peeve with that because it already becomes unaffordable for some folks. But now if half of the people can't go and you can only attend a half or a third of the games, guess what's going to happen? That demand for that ticket increases as well. And now you're talking about a secondary market that's going to be through the roof when it comes to tickets. So this is you're talking about look and feel very different. This could be very interesting from a fan perspective. Not to mention home field advantage. A place like Seattle, when they pack all those people in and you show the decibel. Yeah. The decibel level isn't as much. What kind of crowd noise are you going to have? And is someone going to get in trouble like the Atlanta Falcons for piping in fake crowd noise in order to try and get that advantage?
Yeah, it'll, especially when you think of how the Steelers travel too, and the amount of fans that they have all over the place. Home field advantage, as we've seen, kind of gets flipped on its lid a lot. And in a town that is rabid. Some of the places the Steelers might visit this year, say, Dallas, for example.
Yeah.
Is there going to now all of a sudden be enough change that is less like a home game for the Cowboys and more like either a neutral site or has as many Steelers fans as it has Cowboys fans?
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting. I guess it depends on what people want to pony up for money. Does this become a rich fans kind of thing only? And, there's also going to be the circumstance where you're going to have maybe elderly folks, older folks like the gentleman I split with that may feel that they may be compromised and don't want to risk their health going at all. And that may open up some seats for other folks too. It's very odd to say how exactly any of this is going to work. I would assume, I mean, if I were operating one of these teams, the first thing I would do is find out who wants to opt out. Instead of doing a lottery, if you want to opt out, because that makes it a whole lot easier. If you have a stadium, let's say it holds, what does the Steelers hold? 63, 64, in the whereabouts. I know they increased it a few years.
Somewhere in the 60s,
Yeah, they increased it with the closed end zone. So let's say 63, and let's say you have 13,000 fans that opt out. They say, well, we're opting out. Their family's not interested. They don't want to be around crowds. They have some other conditions which make them susceptible to this. That makes it a heck of a lot easier. Now you're getting down to 50,000 people, and if you're going to only hold, let's say 35, maybe half, 40, that may make it a little easier. The other interesting thing with this too is not every stadium is set up the same way. The Cowboys Stadium has a ridiculous amount of loges and suites. Yeah. And that's where you would pack in a lot of people in there. I don't know. Are companies going to be paying like $10,000 for a game to have a suite that they could only have 3 people in versus the 30 that they used to have?
Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely it's wild. I mean, there's just so many things. And to be honest, too, I was reading that. Let me find it here in the Packers. The Packers thing said something to that effect too, about suite holders will receive specific information. And I mean, I guess if you're in a social circle already, like if I'm with my family and you're in a suite, that would probably make for a more contained experience anyways. It's going to be interesting on how that's going to be handled because, it is what it is. And you come into contact. It's all about coming into contact with a stranger or somebody else that came in contact with the stranger, and this gets, spread around. We haven't even talked about how the heck, I guess, the training camps and things, what they're going to be doing with the players. There was like something about maybe even fining players for they're going to have certain guidelines or policies or rules on what they can or can't do or what they're allowed to do and where they can or can't travel. And it's just there was something on the Sirius XM NFL radio the other day. I'm trying to remember who was talking to the effect of it. I can't credit them because I can't remember their name. But they were talking about how some of the team doctors, they may even had one of them, like maybe from the 49ers. They were talking about how they're so focused on this. You got to worry about player safety when it comes to injuries too. Maybe they're losing track now of like making sure guys stretch, their strength and their other preparations. You're talking about meal planning and nutrition and things like that, where guys have to go in different shifts, or they're going to have to. My wife's work in healthcare, right? You can't just buy a pizza and bring it in for all the employees. This stuff has to be individually packaged and given to people so other people aren't touching it and putting it on a plate. It's just absolutely wild. And I was talking also about, my background with college sports and that. We've already gotten to a point where they don't want to give referees a locker room. They want the referees to wear masks. Now, mind you, we have to blow a whistle. They're already coming out with electronic whistles. They're not as they're not as loud to where I'll lose my hearing, but so you can wear a mask. Now, how am I supposed to wear a mask and run around? If you were in Denver, these guys are already sucking. They got oxygen on the sidelines. The amount of layers to this, there's just so much to it. But the other half of it is there's so much to it financially. They just can't throw their hands up and say, "Oh, forget it. We'll come back next year." So they have to make so many different preparations, not only for the safety and the health of the other employees, the stadium staff, the fans, and everything like that. They have to do it for their own players too. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is one of these guys gets a coronavirus at the beginning of September, and we don't know how long it might take to shake it or kick it or whatever else. You don't know if it spreads through the rest of the locker room. You think the Steelers had injury problems last year and having like about 40 guys active on just the offensive side of the ball? You could be seeing that for almost every team if this really does spread, which we don't know. We can't say. It could come down to who ends up getting this at what time is the same thing of like the best ability is availability. We've talked about the quarterbacks. I mean, we have no idea what we're going to be venturing into. The other half of this is what happens if a player decides, just like I was talking about with the season ticket holders and stuff like that, to opt out and say, well, I'm not going to risk this. I'm not going to play. It's going to be very interesting with contracts and things like that and who has a competitive advantage.
Absolutely. That's going to be an interesting twist to this. I don't know how many of them will. Here's the truth. By nature of them being NFL football players, they have an accelerated view of what they can handle and what they can't.
Wait a minute. Their limbs are falling off. It's like the guy in Monty Python.
It's just a flesh wound. It's only a flesh wound. Merely a flesh wound.
They're not baseball players.
Back here. No, they're not. These are guys whose part of their mentality and makeup is tough. Like, for example, I hurt my calves running, right? I started to get like strains in my calves from running. And, I know that logically, I know the correct thing to do is stop running, right? And let them heal. But I was a player. I was a football player. My mentality is rub some dirt on it and keep going. Play through the pain. Figure it out. Well, that's, we've all been brought up that way. They've all been brought up that way. So while there may be some, I think it's unlikely that there will be a lot. I think that they're going to look at it from that standpoint. And you brought up the potential fines and all the new rules that could go into place and the twist to the personal conduct policy that they may put in place to govern all this, which will be interesting. I mean, how do you tell people – how do you prove that Ezekiel Elliott gave somebody the COVID, right? It came from you. How do you prove that? But if they go and attend a gathering where it's been determined that that's a focal point of COVID and they come away with it, what are they going to do? I don't know. You just kind of sit there and go, man, it's going to be tough to do all this. But I know that they've sat down with the NFL. The NFLPA and whatever it is, I can't remember.
No, that's right. It's the Players Association. You got it.
What the hell? I got it right once.
Broken clock is right twice a day.
Yep, absolutely. But it's gonna be a lot of creative work to try and figure out exactly how to make this season happen. And like you said, we give them a lot of credit. The draft went off much better than I think anybody expected it to. It ended up being much more entertaining. People were starved for sports contents. It got huge ratings, and it was as good as I think it could have come off. I don't think they could have had it be any better, considering the constraints they had. So, maybe they'll get all this right, and it'll work out. But man, there are so many moving pieces, and it really is going to be, I guess what I really do is I caution fans. You really have to have a little patience with how this season is going to play out, in the sense of what you're going to be allowed to do and what you're not going to be allowed to do. Because right now, nobody knows, and until we get there, they may not even know until then. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting attempt to pull all this off.
Yeah, needless to say. And, I was reading some more of the Packers thing. They actually do have something there. They haven't sent any of this information. This is their main press release as they're going forward with it. But they did say the fans can opt out, and it will not, obviously I would have assumed this anyways, it will not penalize their status as season ticket holders or reserving those seats in the future, which is the fair thing to do. You can't be like, well, if you don't take them, guess what? We're going to give them to somebody else who will. And in the case of like Green Bay, Pittsburgh, places like that, there definitely will be takers.
Oh God, yes.
And some other places like Cincinnati. Well, Cincinnati might turn around a little bit with Joe Burrow having been drafted, but going there like over the last few years, they've already been social distancing in that stadium, and so and some others. But well, I mean, I don't know what else I can add to this at this point, Brian, other than they could smoke some marijuana and not get in trouble for it. So just as long as they're not all sharing it and somebody slobbers all over it and gives the other guy the other scenario, the Odell Beckham boat incident or something like that. That's pretty much the only way I think you would trace it back of possibly. We're talking about things like that. But other than that, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see going forward. We've already lost 2 weeks of the preseason now, which I'm sure a lot of people are happy about. So they're only going to play the middle two, the second and third games, which now become the first and second games. So it's going to be interesting to see. Do we get guys like Ben Roethlisberger on the field? Do we get, the starter? Are they going to play at all? Or are we going to have some really ugly September football? Are you going to have somebody? Are you going to have somebody that gets this in August, gets over it, goes to try and go out on the field, and just is not the same kind of guy? They're not in football shape yet, too.
I think that
a lot of stuff.
I mean, we may have to have a whole podcast about that, because I think that is a very important topic and is going to change how guys get opportunities. There's no question. And hopefully, speaking as a season ticket holder, I'm not at all going to be upset if I can get a refund for that game. I'm not going to be able to attend.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of money tied up and involved in it, obviously, and you're going to be traveling, as would I, and sometimes there's a hotel room involved, sometimes there's flights involved, or just being on the road late and things of that nature that I'm sure some of us could take a break from and won't miss, but at the same time, we will miss it. Football,
absolutely.
Football is the mistress, man. It's like you just can't get away. So.
Yeah, it's true.
It is.
It's sad, and yet it's true.
Yeah, ask how many people were already planning on that Thanksgiving game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to go. Hey, your favorite Chinese place is open. It's just like Christmas vacation. So
it is.
That's what the Thanksgiving dinner will be. Here you go. Some chicken fried rice, and we're on our way out. So
won't be arguing. I won't be arguing, but no rice. I can't do the rice.
I know you can't do the rice. So, but it's let me ask you this too while you're at it. A few of the Chinese places around me, we talk about the social distancing, and there's been some engineering work that they have like the giant plexiglass shields around when you have to pick it up. I mean, they put a little shelf in it, and so they open a drawer up to take your money and close it. They've done quite a good job at being able to separate the rest of the world from where they are. I mean, that's been every Chinese restaurant or pickup place that I've been in, which is several around here, all the same way, and it's just. We said it. We don't like saying new normal. Man, it's strange, and I have no problem with it. Obviously, it's like you got to do what you got to do, but then it makes me wonder, what do you know that I don't know? And just by, just by association of ethnicity or nationality, it's like, do you get some stories from back home that really have spooked you to, putting up a fort? And it makes me wonder when I go to like a steak place and it's just like you just walk up to the bar like normal to go get it for carry out. So they will bring it out to your car to some degree too. You could always go that extra mile depending on your own personal security, how you feel and how comfortable you feel with that. But that's the way it's going to be with the football stuff. It's just, maybe I'll be like the bubble boy on Seinfeld, but then again, I might have to buy they might not have to buy an extra seat. That'll social distance me 6 feet on each side. So I'll just come in a giant like plastic bubble and it'll be perfect.
Absolutely. I'm going to get a firsthand look at exactly what that's going to be like, in a couple weeks, because we were just talking, because I'm headed to Vegas to jump off that damn hotel. Yeah. And so I'm going to see what that flight is like. And it'll be interesting. My tickets are booked and my hotel is booked out there. So listen up. Anybody out in Vegas, keep the damn hotel open at least long enough for me to get there and jump off.
Yeah, I wish I was doing the jump with you. We were talking about it, and I'm going on a different vacation as well. And I'm thinking the same things. Just keep everything open to a point where I could just go swimming.
There you go.
It's the only thing we really want, and even that has changed. Even I'm in a complex with like a community type pool, and they came out and said no pool noodles, no rafts or anything. So my kid can't even have like a simple toy in the pool, because if you touch that and then it goes and floats to somebody else, somebody had determined that could give them coronavirus. Forget the fact that you're touching hand railings, the side things, and everything else, and there's chlorine and bleach and whatever else in the pool, and probably pee. But anyways, I digress. Thanks for joining me once again, Brian, and you know what? Happy birthday, America, and enjoy your weekend. Enjoy barbecuing, fireworks, and whatever other shenanigans you may get into.
Be safe. Don't do it, Jason Pierre-Paul. All listeners, including you, and enjoy some high quality protein products like hamburgers and hot dogs. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? How'd you know I was a pyro? Anyways, folks, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. My name's Joe. His name's Brian. And we had already said it, but we'll say it again as we always close the show. We encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.